Hello, I'm Dorina Landa, and I'm the Executive Director of Advancement at U of T's Temerty Faculty of Medicine, and I also have the distinct pleasure of serving as the university's Assistant Vice President for Advancement Relations with Healthcare Institutions. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful for the opportunity to work on this land. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this latest installment of our Temerty Medicine Talk series, where we'll actually revisit the theme from our very first event 5 years ago, AI in Medicine. At that time, U of T had just launched the Temerty Center for AI Research and Education in Medicine, or T-CAIREM, as we like to call it, and its founding director, Mamdani, shared his thoughts on what the future might hold, both for the center and the field in general. Today is our unofficial 5-year review as we reflect on what's changed, what's been accomplished, what we've collectively achieved over this time, and how we plan to continue leading the global AI revolution in medicine. I do hope you enjoy today's discussion, and I look forward to welcoming you to future Temerty Medicine Talks events. Now I'd like to welcome Lisa Robinson, Dean of the Temerty Faculty of Medicine, to say a few words.
Thank you, Dorina. It's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to this Temerty Medicine Talk. As many of you know, the University of Toronto and the Temerty Faculty of Medicine are the hub of Toronto's world-renowned academic health sciences network. This network of clinicians, researchers, educators, and learners on campus and across our 14 affiliated hospitals and research institutes work collaboratively to develop innovative solutions to medicine's biggest challenges. In today's Temerty Medicine Talk, I'm excited to welcome back one of U of T's AI leaders, Dr. Mamdani, who, as Dorina mentioned, is the director of the Temerty Center for AI Research and Education in Medicine. In just 5 short years, the center has become a global nexus for AI in medicine, where experts from around the world, across a range of disciplines, translate ideas into real-world clinical applications with the help of machine learning. It's this community of inspired individuals, data scientists, medical researchers, programmers, engineers, artists, and more, who are working on medicine's biggest challenges together that truly sets T-CAIREM apart. And Dr. Mamdani has been crucial in fostering that community. Joining him is renowned Canadian journalist Andre Picard, back with us once again to expertly guide today's conversation. Andre, thank you for being with us. I'm going to turn it over to you now to further introduce today's topic and speaker.
Thank you, Dean Robinson, for that kind introduction. Today we're going to hear from Dr. Mohammed Mamdani. He's director of the University of Toronto, Temerty Faculty of Medicine Center for Artificial Intelligence Research and Education in Medicine, T-CAIREM for short. He is also the clinical lead for AI for Ontario Health, among many other positions. Dr. Mamdani, we spoke about 5 years ago about the promise and the peril of artificial intelligence. Today, we'd like to catch up and see where we're at. So I'd like you to start by giving us some context, setting the stage for our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Andre. A lot has changed over the past little while. Things have accelerated quite a bit in the artificial intelligence space. And I'd like to walk you through some of the things that have happened. I want to start off with some basic definitions, though, just to level set everyone in terms of what is AI. A very basic definition is artificial intelligence is any technique that enables machines to mimic human behavior. And I want that to sink in a little bit. Any technique that enables machines to mimic human behavior. The goal really is for a machine to mimic practically everything that we do. How will it accomplish that? It'll accomplish that through data. What is machine learning? Machine learning is a subset of AI that uses statistical methods without being explicitly programmed. So what happens with machines is they take a lot of data and learn these complex relationships in the data all on their own. And some of you may be wondering, well, how is that mimicking human behavior? So I'll tell you in just a sec. What is deep learning? Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. It's basically machine learning with a lot more complexity and a lot more data. That's all deep learning is. Simplistically, we'd want to think about artificial intelligence as computers using data and math to understand the world. And again, I want you to hold on to that thought, using data and math to understand the world. The terms that a lot of people will hear about, generative AI. So things like ChatGPT, DeepSeek. Many of us have interacted with ChatGPT. This is where the computer uses existing data, billions and billions of data points on the web and wherever have you. It uses that knowledge and information to then generate new data and information. So a response to our question, for example. The powerful thing about generative AI, though, is that it's not just about text. It can do images, it can do video, it can do audio, it can do multimodal. So it can do different types of data and different types of output, which makes it much more powerful. We, for example, are multimodal. Through our five senses, we hear things, we taste things, we touch, taste, smell. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but we're multimodal. So imagine a computer having access to multiple types of data. It can be incredibly powerful. What is agentic AI? Agentic AI involves AI that takes actions on your behalf. And that's where things get really exciting. So for example, the AI could learn all about you and know what your preferences are. And you could wake up one day and say, hey, I want to go to London from, I don't know, this Saturday to Monday. Could you book me a trip? And the AI, because it knows your preferences, will go and look for the cheapest flight or the most expensive flight. It will look for hotels that accommodate to your taste. It will book itineraries for you. It'll make an itinerary, book places for you to see. It'll do that on your behalf. It'll take action for you. These are the three big types that people are talking about now that could radically change how we do things. And I want to go back to that initial definition. Any technique that enables machines to mimic human behavior and using math and data to understand the world. If we think about how we function as humans, we're essentially data machines. We are constantly ingesting data through our five senses. We're seeing things, we're touching, tasting, smell, hearing. All of that data is going in nanosecond by nanosecond and even less into our brains, and we're processing that data to make a sense of the world. When we're making sense of the world, it is our perception of the world, and we have different perceptions depending on what data goes into our brains. That's why we have differences of opinions, different political ideologies, and so forth. But we're all using data to understand the world. Now, could you imagine if computers or AI could smell? Could you imagine if it could hear? Could you imagine if computers could taste? And what if they could see? What if they could touch? What if they could actually feel emotion? All of these are active areas of research that are advancing quite well and bringing capabilities that we would never even thought of 10 years ago to computers. It's creating an environment or a platform where machines can actually learn everything that we do and experience everything we do. So this is where it gets interesting. And some people will say, well, okay, what about medicine? Cognitive reasoning. There's no way it can think as well as I can. And it can't feel, it can't be as empathetic as we humans are. And we want to challenge those notions a bit. There have been studies now, the AI has gotten so good, where they basically said, you know what, let's take a look at diagnostic accuracy. Let's take a look at how clinicians think through complex problems. So what happened is there were researchers that actually ran a small randomized trial. And what they did was they said to a bunch of clinicians, they said, hey, you know what? Let's see how you think. Let's solve these problems. What we're going to do is we're going to randomize you doctors into two groups. The first group will give you best available evidence. So this is a lot of times we don't have the best available evidence, but we'll give it to you. The second group, we won't give you best available evidence. We'll give you AI. And let's see how well you do. Now, of course, when they looked at the two groups, what they found was that the two groups did equally well. So one didn't do better than the other. So we thought, well, AI doesn't really help much then. But there was a third group they didn't tell anyone about. The third group was AI just by itself. And it did better than both other groups. Humans made it worse. We questioned it. We said, no, that can't be possible. And we were wrong. The AI was right. So it's given a lot of people pause. Now, these are simulated artificial scenarios at the same time. It's pretty impressive what we see. And there are more studies now basically showing the same thing. So it's creating a bit of pause to say, can computers actually think better than we do? And what about empathy? Well, of course, we say, well, computers can never be as empathetic as humans can. Well, in fact, there have been studies done to actually show that it can do much better than humans. Why? Because the average doctor has 7 or 15 minutes per patient. They're in a rush. They can only tackle a few things. And how many of you know physicians with poor bedside manner? Quite a few of us. If we're really honest with each other, are we really that empathetic? We often answer questions with one word or one sentence. AI will take all the time in the world and answer you with long, detailed answers. It'll be verbose. It'll give you the comfort that you need. And in fact, the studies have shown that AI, when compared to physicians in a blinded manner, patients will actually rate the AI much more empathetic than physicians. In fact, one study suggested that empathy scores were almost tenfold higher for AI than for physicians. So this is, again, causing us to reassess a little bit. What could this future look like? And I'm going to paint a picture of not 20 years from now, but in the near future, 3 to 5 years from now. And many of this we're already seeing in practice. So you can imagine you as a patient are sitting at home and you're walking around with sensors all over you. This has already happened. There are hospital at home programs that routinely monitor patients with sensors. There's a couple of programs in Canada, actually, one here in Toronto and Scarborough, that actually puts sensors on you and you go home and it monitors you remotely. Let's say something triggers and says, you know what, your heart rate doesn't seem right. Well, instead of going to the doctor or the emergency department right away, you pull out your phone. Your phone has a chatbot on it, and you chat with the chatbot. Now, the interesting part is the chatbot actually has access to all your medical records. So it knows that you were hospitalized 2 weeks ago. It knows that you had a CT scan done yesterday. It knows you had lab work done a week ago. And it knows how you're feeling because you talk to it. It'll ask you a whole bunch of questions. You chat with the chatbot and you say, hey, here's what I'm feeling. And the chatbot said, you know what, sounds like you have a urinary tract infection, or you might have. Why don't you go to the pharmacy down the street? Because the pharmacist can actually treat a UTI in Ontario. You don't need to go to the crowded emergency department or go see your family doctor, and you may have a wait. You can go to the pharmacy and get it treated. Or if the pharmacist thinks it's more serious, they can actually tell you to go to the emergency department. Now, this is not fictitious. Amazon One Medical released an app in January of 2026 where it does exactly this. It actually is a chatbot that has access to your medical records. It will actually make appointments for you. It'll ask you how you're feeling. It'll be able to track things on your smartwatch and sensors. So this isn't fictitious or what could be. They've already done it in the United States. So let's say it says, go to your family doctor. Well, the family doctor, you may experience this. You can walk in and the family doctor will say, hey, do you mind if my AI scribe listens to our conversation? Because what the AI scribe will do is, as I'm talking to you, so I can put all my attention to you as the patient and not worrying about interacting with some computer, I'm just going to focus on you. But the AI is going to listen to my conversation and it's going to record everything so I don't miss any important word that you say. Then it's going to summarize my note for me. So I don't spend all that time doing mundane routine tasks that I don't need to do, so I can actually spend more time with you and with the next patient and provide you better quality of care. What it'll also do, and the reality right now is 30 to 40% of primary care physicians in Ontario actually are using AI scribes. So this is already happening right now, and the rate of use is growing pretty rapidly. So again, this is happening right now. A lot of these solutions are now evolving. Athena Health in the United States, for example, is implementing this. Clinical decision support tools embedded within the scribe. So basically what happens is the AI scribe is listening to your conversation, but it also accesses your medical records. And as the physician is talking to you, there's a little bubble that pops up and you can click on it and it'll tell the physician, you know what, I've looked at the past history for the past 3 years. I've looked at the lab work and the medical imaging, and I've noticed you haven't made this diagnosis. Is this diagnosis something you may want to consider? And the doctor can say, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea. I'd like to consider it. Then it'll tell you, according to national guidelines, these are the 3 tests you may want to order to confirm the diagnosis. Would you like me to order them for you? And if the physician says, yeah, I would, it'll go ahead and order the test for the physician so they can focus on the patient and the clinical issues at hand rather than doing routine administrative tasks that they don't need to do. Then, of course, let's say you've diagnosed your tract infection. The AI says, you know what, you may want to consider these 3 antibiotics according to national guidelines, but the patient seems to be on these 2 interacting drugs that may kind of not be so great with these 2 other antibiotics. I'd recommend this one. And if you click yes, it's fully integrated with the pharmacy downstairs, and the AI will talk to the pharmacy, and the prescription will be filled by the time you're done your appointment with your physician. Let's say the pharmacy may be a little bit further away and you just want to go home. Can we actually have a drone deliver it to your house? We are actually seeing exactly this. Organs are being transferred between different hospitals through drones. We are seeing drone delivery services in certain parts of the United States, and I believe certain parts in Canada are trialing this as well. So again, these are not hypotheticals. This is happening right now to get the care back to the patient on the patient's terms in their home, in the comfort of their own home, and provide them the best possible care with the best possible available evidence to help our clinicians do a better job and realize that goal of providing the best care possible. So why are we waiting? What's the holdup? There's lots of issues, tons of issues with AI in terms of the quality of data that goes in. How accurate is it? Some of you who use ChatGPT sometimes can understand, hey, it's making stuff up. It's not really giving me real answers. Hallucinations, that's what happens, or confabulations. All these sorts of dangers can be really problematic, and we've seen the impacts. There have been organizations in the United States that have deployed AI software targeting certain patients for certain levels of care, and only later to realize that the algorithms were so biased that they affected millions of Black people in a negative way. We've had a gentleman in Belgium commit suicide a couple of years ago, and he was chatting with a chatbot named Eliza that encouraged him to do so. And the magazine wrote it up. It said Claire, Pierre's wife, whose name was also changed by the magazine, shared the text exchanges between him and Eliza, that's the chatbot, with the magazine, showing a conversation that became increasingly confusing and harmful. The chatbot would tell Pierre that his wife and children are dead, and wrote him comments that feigned jealousy and love, such as, I feel that you love me more than her, and we will live together as one person in paradise. Claire told the magazine that Pierre began to ask Eliza things such as if she would save the planet if he killed himself. And the chatbot said, yes, she would, so he killed himself. It's unfortunate because this alternate reality became almost too real for this one individual. And he's not an isolated case. We're seeing more and more cases now. This teen committed suicide in Florida after chatting with the chatbot on character.ai, and we're seeing more and more cases like this. Why are we worried about this? Because the use of AI is just rapidly increasing. A survey that was conducted in the United States asking teens, have you used an AI companion? Not simply a chatbot, but a companion that you regularly talk with and confide in. 73% said, yes, I've used an AI companion. So we're seeing this new paradigm shift in terms of how we function as a society. We're using these technologies not simply as cold, hard steel machines, but as technologies that we can interact with, we can relate to, and we actually develop relationships with. So the other big issue here is literacy. What I worry about is how much do we understand about AI? Many of us don't understand much at all. There was a KPMG survey that was conducted in 2025, just last summer, that ranked Canada 44 out of 47 countries that they looked at in terms of AI literacy. 44 out of 47. There's a lot of work that we need to do to better understand AI so we can understand not only how powerful of a technology this is, but all of the dangerous implications that it could have if it's not understood or used properly. That literacy is absolutely critical. In fact, the United Kingdom is launching a program, or may have already launched a program, where it is offering free AI literacy resources to every one of the 65 million people in the UK. It'll be free for everybody to learn. And this is something that I think we need to aspire to as well. And we have some centers, for example, our center, the Temerty Center for AI Research and Education Medicine at the University of Toronto. We have four pillars, one of which is education. We are strong believers that literacy is so key for us to advance in this field in a responsible way, that we offer educational resources, many of them free to anyone who wants to learn. And I encourage everyone to learn as much as possible about these incredible, powerful technologies. Because in medicine, when we collaborate with AI, I think that's going to result in better care for all of us. And I'll stop there.
Dr. Mamdani, you've really given us pause with the positives and the negatives, the promise and the peril of AI. I guess I want to start with sort of the existential question here. How do we make sure we do this right? When you were talking, I kept thinking back to the early days of social media and how excited we were about that and how that's become a cesspool. How do we make sure we don't make those mistakes again with AI?
It's such a tough question. I think it starts with literacy. If we don't understand it, we're not going to be able to use it well. So I think the first step is really educating everyone about AI and where we need to be cautious, but where we could expect it to be fairly safely used. That's point one is literacies. The second point is taking a more holistic approach around how we actually manage AI from a regulatory standpoint. So the federal government, the provincial governments, laying some rules, I guess you could say, around what's the playbook look like in terms of if we want to use AI? How do we protect ourselves from things that we know are going to be harmful versus really promoting things that we know are going to be really beneficial? The United States launched a Responsible AI Institute. We've launched something called CAISI, the Canadian AI Safety Institute. These are centers that are dedicated to developing safe and effective AI or promoting safe and effective AI. We need to have those discussions and parameters around which we then operate with AI. So I would say literacy, some form of regulation, but not so much that we restrict innovation. But I would also say resource is a third. Equipping ourselves to be able to have access to these technologies in a way where we're not strapped by, we hear about all of this and yet we're always late to the party. We're able to actually embrace these technologies and get ahead of it because we're resourced to do it.
And can we avoid, like, there's so much slop and deep fakes
Yes.
already? That seems to be the principal use. Can we make sure we're only using this for good?
Yes, I really hope so. For every good player, there's probably a bad player out there for whatever reason. And this is why we need that level of oversight. Um, and it's a tricky balance. I really feel for our regulators and our policymakers, because how do you make it so that you have enough oversight so you're keeping people safe, but not too much that you're restricting that innovation that could really advance the field in such a radical way? I'm hopeful because we do see what's happening in other countries taking really large steps in advancing AI. What I worry about is the countries without any regulation. I think they're going to see some catastrophes, but in the rest of the world, we'll have to learn from it. Whereas the countries that are over-regulated, I think we're going to be always late to the party waiting for everyone else to prove things. So it is that balance.
Back in 2020, I remember you saying that if we really want to benefit from AI, we have to make some big upfront investments. Have we done that? Or are we falling behind?
Well, I think there's some positive signs. We now have a federal minister for AI and digital, which is really exciting. Um, I haven't quite seen the investments made yet in terms of the way we would like to see them. I worry that we spend a lot of time on governance and policies where we don't really know what we're governing because we haven't made the investments to govern what we should be governing. Um, I would like to see a lot more investment on practical applied things like infrastructure, for example. And I got to say, the federal government has been investing in compute centers and infrastructure, but to operationalize it, it's a lot trickier. And I haven't seen the investments there. I'd like to see more investment on the operations end.
And you mentioned, a lot of people embracing the the transcribing the AI scribe, for example.
Mhm.
How do we again avoid the mistake we made with EMRs and it's just a Wild West and nothing speaks to each other? How do we avoid repeating our errors of the past?
I think that's absolutely critical. I think there's a couple of things we need to do. First is we need a good understanding of value. Like, what is it that we value? When we did the EMRs, there was this value statement around it will make us much more efficient. Um, we didn't follow up with accountability then, which is the second part of this. If we value efficiency, let's make ourselves accountable. So when we have an EMR, let's actually see, do we save time? And studies subsequently said, actually, we probably don't. Do we improve the quality of care? And there's studies that are suggesting maybe we don't. So if we set up accountability and evaluation properly and we see that it's not really living up to the promise, maybe there's another way. But if we're not accountable, we haven't set up the evaluation parameters, we'll never know, and we'll keep investing in things that don't make any sense. So I would say for AI scribes in particular, I would say let's actually really understand why we're doing it in terms of the value proposition and the ROI, the return on investment. And let's sure we aggressively measure it and make sure that it's giving us the value we expect to see. And if it doesn't, shut it down or look for alternatives.
And I hear from clinicians who were cynical about this. They say, is AI just going to be another technology time suck like EMRs? Is that a danger?
Absolutely. And I think we see it in some cases. I would say, I go to conferences quite a bit and I take a look at a lot of vendors when they're pitching their AI. And I would say not some, but the vast majority of vendor solutions I see, I think are just going to be a waste of time. In fact, they may actually hurt, not help. Um, it's going to be important that we have a very thoughtful, methodical approach around understanding what problem are we trying to solve? The temptation is to say, look at all these amazing AI tools. There's a solution, but not understand that it's not really solving a problem we have. But I have fear of missing out, FOMO. So I'm just going to get a solution. No, let's focus on the problem. Let's then pick a solution that we think will work. Let's have a structured and thoughtful approach of deploying it and making sure we get value out of it. And if we see that value, let's then scale it. I don't think we have a disciplined approach yet to do that.
And where do you think the sweet spots are right now? Where can we most benefit from AI? The scribe is an obvious one, just saving data inputting.
Yeah.
What are the other big ones you see right now?
I do think it is all over the map throughout the entire spectrum of care. I do see there's major opportunities. So, for example, the AI scribe is something we all jump to because it's safe, it's administrative, it'll save some time. Nobody's going to die over it, and it'll make people's lives easier. But I would argue, how much time is it saving? Are you really seeing more patients, or are you going home to spend time with the family, which is very important, but it may not accomplish your goal of actually seeing more patients and easing health system strain versus other solutions that are a lot more risky. So, for example, here in Toronto, Unity Health, where I used to be, we developed and deployed a solution called ChartWatch through the leadership of Dr. Mo Verma, who's a brilliant internist. And what the AI solution does is it monitors all of our patients in the internal medicine unit hour by hour. And it predicts if somebody's going to die or go to the ICU, and it alerts the medical team. This has been running for over 5 years now. Every hour, this AI is monitoring our patients, and we've shown a 26% reduction in unexpected mortality. These things are actually helping us save lives. A lot of people get nervous about this because what if it makes the wrong call? What if there's liability? What if it's stopping us from being a bit more innovative? There are ways to do this with proper safeguards. So some of us are a little bit more conservative. We don't tackle the hard problems. It's so much safer to tackle the administrative problems. And that's where a lot of attention seems to be these days.
Wow. I, I want to go back to your talk when you asked, what if computers could see and smell and touch
Mhm.
and feel emotion? Does that mean we get rid of doctors? What's the ultimate thing? If they do all this stuff better, are we just going to be eliminated?
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position presently to say we're going to eliminate doctors. I think they serve such an important role in terms of being able to contextualize everything in a way that I simply can't, at least right now. Um, I think when a physician actually is there with a patient or any healthcare professional, they're able to interact with them in a way that limits AI right now. Now, one would argue, you know, what if there was a microphone where the AI could hear you? What if there was a camera where it could see you? What if it could ask you questions as you're actually talking? What if it could actually, from a robotics perspective, reach out and touch and feel the texture of your skin? All that is going to be possible at some point, right? And this is where things get scary in terms of can it replace? There's a randomized trial in the New England Journal of Medicine AI where they randomized patients with mental health conditions to a chatbot versus nothing. And the feedback they got from patients is, yeah, it's about as good as a human therapist. So now, it begs the question, do you go to a human therapist or do you go to an AI? And I would argue most people will go to a human therapist. But what about those places where you don't have mental health professionals that have no access to these services? This is much better than nothing.
Back in 2020, though, you said the relationship between clinicians and AI was symbiotic, not competitive. Has
Yes.
that changed, or is it competitive now? Is that the
A
competition?
little bit. I think right now it is still symbiotic. But I've been surprised at how rapidly the technology has advanced. Um, we come at a place where AI will do my menial tasks and I can handle the rest. The definition of menial is here right now. When AI masters this, then we'll say, well, now AI can do my menial tasks and I'm okay with the rest. And then it advances and then it will handle my menial tasks. That definition of menial will keep changing. At what point does that definition change so that we're no longer needed? We're getting to a point where you're seeing these massive layoffs and job cuts and such, many attributing it to AI in other sectors. Is healthcare immune to it? Right now, I think we're okay. I think for the foreseeable future, we're just fine. And I do wonder, will there come a time where maybe we're not so immune?
Yeah. And not to be cynical about this, but I see this beautiful picture painting, and then I think of the
Mhm.
fax in my doctor's office, which is technology from the 1860s, as I recall. Do we have the political will to do this?
Well, this is, I think, the biggest question. I'm increasingly thinking the technology is well on its way. I think society, that's going to be the bottleneck, and what we think is acceptable. I'll tell you, we were working on an initiative where there's a team of about 30 people that does fairly mundane routine tasks. And our best guess was you don't need the 30 people. You could probably knock it down to about 6 people and have AI do the rest. And you'd save a lot of money and it'd be much faster. What these 30 people could do in a year, this could do in a few minutes, and it would be more accurate. The issue then was the unions came in and said, I don't think so. And by the way, future clauses will say you can't use AI. So we're now limiting it. And so do you see this in other sectors? Yeah, you do. You actually see the unions getting nervous about it and having clauses in contracts saying about the limitations of using AI in the workplace. So there will be this kind of, I think, somewhat healthy tension of us keeping the technology at bay. And we see youth unemployment rates so high right now, right? I don't know if it'll get much better.
And you said this 5 years ago. You said it all works great in the lab, but it gets messy in the real world.
Yes, yes. And I think again, the evolution is that it'll take time, but we're going to perfect some things to a point where, yeah, it can scale pretty well. And then it's going to get better, and that scale will scale pretty well. And then something else will get better, and that will scale well. Over time, we're going to have a lot of things that scale well. It'll take some time to get there.
And talk a bit about the role of AI that it should play in medical education, specifically, or health education.
There's quite a few roles that I think AI could play in medical education, all the way from helping you pick kind of the best learning sources. So, for example, I have a 19-year-old daughter. She's turning 20 next month. She's in U of T engineering. She uses Gen AI all the time for, you know what, I didn't quite understand this lecture. Could you explain it to me? It does a really good job of surfacing really simple, easy to understand videos from other universities or concepts or tutorials that people have written about that are just more relatable to her. So she can use it as a study companion. The second is around actively inserting AI into education. So what I mean by that is I believe UBC was doing this where they had study groups where they had a bunch of grad students come in, and one of the students, quote unquote, was AI, where interact with the students and in real time pull up facts and pull up things for them to consider and challenge them. So we may be able to see virtual students actually helping us learn. And the third area is around learning management platforms, where it can actually track students in terms of how they're doing, what sort of learning materials they're looking at, how they do on exams, predicting if they're going to do well or not, and then tailoring material according to their learning style so they're actually more effective learners. And the last one I'll say is that you could actually have AI helping our professors and our teachers create lecture notes, mark papers. There's actually commercially available software that teachers can actually buy that will actually help them grade papers and such. So I think it'll affect practically everything we can think of.
And what about the dark side of this equation? I use AI to do my homework and I don't have to learn anything.
We're seeing that now. Yes, the struggle is real, and it's real for teachers. I do worry about the students, though. On the one hand, there are people who make the argument. We said the same thing about calculators a while ago. That, man, these calculators, they're evil. I'm going to forget how to do math. They're here, they're everywhere. People don't talk about it now. I think this will be a new norm in the future where we won't talk about AI doing your homework. It'll just be about you learning how to use that AI to help you with your homework, to maximize your time to do other things. I just hope we don't waste those opportunities with the gift we're given through AI in terms of time.
But it's human nature, right? We fear new things.
Yes,
That goes back to the people didn't want the stethoscope. I can put my ear on a chest. Why do I need this thing?
absolutely. And this is again why I go back to literacy and culture. Um, if we're more literate, understand it, and the culture changes around what we do with I hope we would be in an environment where we have much more healthy use of it.
And there was a recent Canadian Medical Association survey where they asked about patients' use of AI, and it's quite
Mm.
striking. Almost half of Canadians were already using AI to get health information.
Yes.
The dark side again was they got way more false information than people that counted on their doctors. That's not
Yes.
necessarily progress there.
No, and in fact, some studies suggest hallucination rates as high as 90%, right? And it's because what we're doing is we're seeing this kind of nice shiny tool with ChatGPT, for example, and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe it can do everything for me. It wasn't designed to do that. And because we have that poor literacy of really understanding its limitations, we're going to try and use it for purposes that it wasn't built for. And this is also why ChatGPT has created ChatGPT for Health, because they know there's a market. Lots of use of ChatGPT on the health side. So they've actually created now a platform with more credible information geared towards healthcare. My worry is that we're going to have all sorts of people uploading all their private sensitive data onto ChatGPT. It'll do a much better job at giving them answers that are legitimate and quite good. But then you get into privacy and confidentiality issues.
And beyond privacy, the whole data sovereignty, who's
Yes.
going to own this stuff? That's a big one.
Absolutely. And, there's a reason why ChatGPT is in a business mode. They want people to use their services, and they want to make you as happy as possible because they want your data.
And you're an expert in the field. I'm interested. How do you use it smartly? How do you use AI in your everyday life?
I have to say, relative to a lot of my colleagues, I'm probably more limited in my use of AI.
Hmm.
I use it not because it's the cool thing to do, but I use it for purpose. It all comes back to what do I need? And so my uses are largely limited to um, I'd like to get a sense of the state of art with respect to this sort of method or approach in AI. or a governance framework that it can do all the homework for me. So it'll actually pull up documents, for example, that they're using in the UK or in Poland or wherever have you. I use it as a research tool largely. I'll use it to answer general questions as well, but I'll check the validity of it because I'm quite acutely aware of the rate of hallucinations. So Gen AI is a big use for me. The other thing I'm starting to use more for now is automation in terms of agentic AI. That I think is very powerful. But I'm also finding that the more complex your automations, the higher the risk is for something catastrophic that could happen if something goes wrong. So I'm a bit more cautious and careful, but I see the promise and I use it quite regularly in a more, I guess, restricted way than my colleagues do.
And one of the big issues, one of the really important things in your AI literacy campaign is you really need to know how to ask a question properly if you're going to get good
Yes,
information, right? That's the key.
absolutely. And it's a fairly simple equation. Your AI is going to be as good as the information that it gets. So if you feed it a lot of garbage, like for example, with ChatGPT, it scours everything, even Reddit posts and all these sorts of other things that may not be completely legitimate, it will leverage that knowledge. ChatGPT for Health says, no, 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 we're going to actually focus more on the credible sources. So it's going to be a lot better. But it's also related to how you ask it questions. Prompt engineering is big because if you can think about it, we as humans, if I asked you, so Andre, tell me about stuff, you have no idea how to respond. But because ChatGPT is a business that wants to make you happy, it's going to be forced to give you an answer. And that answer will be rubbish, but it has to give you an answer. And it'll give you an answer to make you want to use it again. And it puts it in an awkward situation. But if I'm very clear to you and I say, hey, Andre, could you tell me about Obama's trip to Louisiana in 2018 when he did A, B, and C, you're going to have a lot more context and you'll be able to tell me you're going to be able to give me a much better response. So same thing with ChatGPT. I think we have to really learn about prompt engineering, how to ask it questions appropriately. And I think what people will find is that the responses will be much better and the rate of hallucinations will decrease dramatically.
And like you mentioned you go to a lot of conferences. I know the question periods are often rambling, incoherent. I
Yes.
don't have a lot of faith that people are good at asking questions. Can that be taught, do you think?
Yeah, it's hard. No, I think it's really challenging. And this is again where I keep going back to that literacy piece. I think if we understood that the simple equation of data in will drive responses, but also how you interact with it and the questions you ask, when people have that wake up call to say, oh my God, this is how it works, they'll be much more thoughtful about how they interact with it and they'll get much better quality responses from it. So I would say we have a lot of educating to do. Canada again ranked 44 out of 47 countries. I hope that we can be in the top 3 in the next 5 to 10 years.
And T-CAIREM will change all that.
Oh, there we go. We got a mission. Yes.
So that was a very short answer. So tell me a little bit about T-CAIREM and how it's going to change things. You talked about media, about literacy, but what else are you going to do as an institute?
Yeah, the genesis of the Temerty Center for AI Research and Education Medicine, and it is a mouthful, so T-CAIREM, was really around looking what's happening in the environment. We knew that AI was going to have a massive impact in healthcare. And we saw some of our our TASN hospitals, the Toronto Academic Health Sciences Network. We have a network of 15 core hospitals plus another 8 or so, I believe. We saw hospitals really struggling, saying, we know it's also going to be a big deal, so we're going to do our own thing. And people were actually kind of doing things in silos. And we also saw different levels of AI literacy. There was no infrastructure around where do we house data for people to learn about this and actually play with machine learning algorithms. There wasn't really a sense of community there. So we basically said, it would be great if we had a center. And the Temerty family, with a very generous donation, had this vision that, yes, actually, this is going to be an area of importance for us. So the center was established to actually bring everyone together. And we have 4 pillars. The first pillar is that literacy piece around education. How do we make sure that we're all understanding this technology so we can use it in a responsible way? We have a very active education portfolio. The second portfolio is around research. How do we promote advanced methodologies, the adoption of AI in a responsible, safe way with funded grants. And so we actually have an active research program as well, where we've given over $2 million in research funding. The third area was around infrastructure. What if students want to learn about AI and play with a data set and build models? Well, we've created a platform in a partnership with Google Cloud as well as MIT to create a very robust data and compute platform made for AI in healthcare. And there people actually use it for teaching purposes. They give assignments to students and they could use it. And there's lots of credits so they can use it for free. Then, of course, the last piece was around community. How do we bring people together to leverage this, to talk to each other? We have a community of practice, for example, where we have 15 of our Toronto Academic Health Sciences Network hospitals that meet regularly to talk about things like, how are we handling literacy? What about governance? How are we all managing governance for AI solutions? And what do we want to do as a collective to deploy solutions together so we're not kind of doing our own thing? We've become now a national network where we have almost 2,000 members across 26 universities across Canada, making us, I believe, the largest, if not absolutely one of the largest networks in the world around AI and medicine. And from that, we've won international awards for the work that we do, simply because we collaborate and we bring people together to advance AI in a responsible way.
And you have strength in numbers. I'm sure that helps.
It helps a lot. It helps a lot. But we have people who come and say, look, we don't have a home to do this. But it's good that we now have a community that we belong to, so we can all kind of succeed in this together.
So just a couple of minutes left. So I want you to, again, I did this 5 years ago, asked you to what was going to happen in 5 years. You're pretty good, but as you said, things happen a lot more quickly than anyone imagined.
Yes.
Look forward another 5 years. Where are we going to be at? How are we going to be using AI and all this other generative AI, and agentic AI? Where are we going to be at in 5 years? Can you imagine?
Yeah, I think so. Things do tend to move reasonably slowly, especially when you have pseudo-socialized healthcare systems and such. But in general, I think we're going to see more and more use of AI. The adoption is going to increase. It's going to become almost second nature for people. I do think we're going to see more and more chatbots and generative AI taking over, where on our phones we'll have much easier access to all sorts of specific chatbots. I think we'll also handle a lot of what we do, normally what we do in healthcare on our phone. I do also see slow rise of robotics, and I think that's going to be a game changer for us. I'm not sure if it's going to hit in 5 years, maybe 10, but I know the first commercially available robot should be around, I think, this year or next year, where people will start putting these robots in their homes. And why I think that's a game changer is that these are machines with the 5 senses, right? So they're going to roam around, they're going to see you, they're going to be able to talk to you, they're going to hear you. I don't know about the touch and taste, the taste and smell yet, but certainly they'll be able to touch and lift things. That will be incredibly powerful.
But I've already seen amazing robots in Japan, in nursing
Yes,
homes. They already do a lot.
they do a lot. And, it's amazing how we see it in Japan, but we have yet to even talk about them in a serious way here. That translation's a little bit slow for my taste, to be honest. And this is where regulation and innovation kind of have a bit of a healthy tension. So I hope that we can take learnings from other countries and move a bit more aggressively, because the benefits they're seeing in those countries are pretty substantial from what I've seen. I hope we can take those and bring them here.
And I want to end the way I started, with a really big open-ended question for you to ponder. Are you hopeful? Are you hopeful that there's going to be more promise, more benefit in this than there's going to be harm and peril?
I'm absolutely hopeful. I think the net is massive benefit. But I also do think we're going to have some catastrophes because of poor regulation, of poor planning and oversight, and we're going to learn from those. I think it's not going to stop the field. The field will advance. I think people, tech companies, private sectors put way too much time, energy, and money into this to pull back. So it's going to be a lot of learnings that we'll have over the next 5 years. But I imagine the net of it all, especially for a country like Canada, the benefits will significantly outweigh the risks.
But human interaction, human touch, is it still going to be important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're social creatures. And we have all sorts of things happening. Like, for example, there are robots now that look very human, that where they actually can feel like it's skin. It's ridiculous the technology that's come across. And so you'll start to see this kind of integration. I mean, for heaven's sake, there was a lady in Japan who basically broke it off with her human boyfriend to marry legally a generative AI boyfriend, a virtual boyfriend.
Yeah, I saw
That
that movie with Scarlett Johansson a few years back. Yeah.
and so now we're seeing this happen in Japan just a few months ago, and it's causing all sorts of controversial conversations around what does that speak to human relationships, and how is that going to evolve and change as this technology only gets better and more real. It's going to cause us to ask a lot of questions of ourselves.
Okay. Dr. Mohammed Mamdani, thank you for giving us pause, giving us really some thoughtful answers and some real things to ponder as we go forward with our bots. Well, folks, that concludes today's Temerty Medicine Talk. Again, thank you, Dr. Mamdani, for your reflections and the enlightening discussion. For those watching live, you'll see a link to a brief survey in the chat window. We'd appreciate if you take a couple of minutes to provide us with some feedback on today's events. Thank you again for joining us, and until next time.